Hello, good people from the internet. A-létheia here presenting another episode of the podcast, The Object Petite A Dwellers. This time around with our good friend Brad Hoff, all the way from Australia. Enjoy.
Stop right away. all right. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Sorry. You were done.
So COVID, right, is the big topic of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And here in Canberra, we experienced it, I think, quite differently to the rest of the world, as in so our numbers, right, like it's always like, hospital numbers and people sick, people dying, all that kind of thing. So for 2020, like we had about 30 people caught COVID in April, and then nothing, so zero. So we were going outside, like, not wearing masks, nothing, because there was no virus. The rest, everybody had, shut down all the flights, and there was no travel or anything. So where we were living, it was fine. And then you'd read in the news about all these other countries like suffering and things like that. So yeah, the Australian laws were really strict, but it allowed those of us living here to have it really easy. It only really came to a head for us personally when it was about a year ago, so March 2021, that my wife had to go back to Malaysia for a family emergency, and she only really needed to be there for about 3 weeks, but it ended up being 3.5 months because of the difficulties of getting the paperwork done and then getting on a flight. And actually, in order to even get onto a flight, we ended up booking her a business class ticket, which cost like so much money. But it had to be done, or else she would have been there another 6 months or something like that. So yeah.
Well, you see, that was what I meant by having a hard time with those laws. Because hey, if you are a citizen of the world, if you have to move around and you got these issues to deal with, I know that for the English people, many of them are really angry with the whole situation, so much that I heard that people are mad at this famous musician, what's his name? Eric Clapton. And everybody considers him like some sort of Nazi because something that he said about how he didn't agree with the laws for traveling and he preferred to tour somewhere else. Something like that. It was a silly thing. But you see, the situation is heavy when it comes to, public's opinion about these things.
Yeah, especially in these very privileged places where got nothing else to worry about, and people were just like, oh, like a musician said X, like who cares, right? Like really, in the scheme of things, it's not a big deal that like this person, they're their own person. They can choose to do a concert or not do a concert for whatever reasons they have. To be then held publicly accountable to decisions is just silly. And yeah, definitely seen over the last couple of years the worst in people coming out in just complete disagreement with whatever rules are being made. And I don't know about every government in the world, but most were just trying to do what they could with a really difficult situation, right? And you can go, hey, some listened to experts, some didn't, whatever. There's many factors in running a country that you've got to take into account, and people are making decisions, and hey, maybe there's a few who are making those decisions selfishly, but I like to believe that actually the majority are just going, hey, we've got to deal with this somehow. People aren't listening, people aren't protecting themselves, so I'm going to put in a law that means that people have to protect themselves because I'm protecting all of society. I'm trying to keep hospital numbers down and things like that so that we can treat people. And it's not just about treating people with COVID, it's about treating people who have other issues going on. And if you've got all the hospital beds taken, you can't treat those people and you just end up with more illness and more death, right? So try to get those numbers down. And yeah, then blame the governments for like, oh, you've put in this rule is just so wrong.
True. Though we know that what happens doesn't necessarily happen just because there are governments involved. We know that governments, as you said, the goal is supposedly to do everything to have everyone, some sort of contempt and, keep the country stable. That's the whole thing of a government, some sort of like Windows it is for computers. A program to stabilize. I forgot the name for it. Like iOS is for Apple. Like Android is for my cell phone.
Operating system?
Yeah. Yes, I was looking for that word. yeah, that's what a government is. It's an operating system. Meaning it's got like different centers of control in different parts of the population, and it allows the energy to flow in such way that makes everyone supposedly have the same rights, to keep the country stable. The issue is that we all know that there are other actors within the country that or factors that overcome the barriers of countries, that they do have interest that can sometimes make the life of people in certain countries really, really awful, and sometimes those organizations, they get with deals with countries, with governments, that make governments, fall into compromise. An example to this, I'm living in Ecuador. That we moved here after we married. I came here first, and 6 months after, Francia moved from Venezuela, leaving all her family. And you know how hard it is for every Venezuelan wife to leave their family behind, especially the mom. It's been a difficult thing sometimes to adapt, and we only have the two of us here. So of course, we gotta grown really, really fond of each other and close, because that was the only way. And we have seen, obviously, and shared a lot of different views of what befell in our country, and how this country is behaving in the last years. The reason why we came to this country, the reference we had, and how it all develop afterwards. This country is right now under heavy pressure, internationally speaking, because of the IMF. As there were three events. One was an earthquake, then there was another thing, and then there's COVID. And because of that, the governments at the time, apparently considering themselves as socialists, as you know how that happens, that's only a name. They just acquired these debts, and these debts were really awful. And you know that the debt means that the country is being forced to go under austerity rules. And because of that, the lifestyles of many people have been affected so badly. And you could see that during the pandemic, there was a time in which this tiny country became a huge news worldwide. And I don't know if you remember what it was.
No, I can't. Go on, remind me.
Okay, the corpses laying on the floor or boxes in front of their houses.
Oh, yeah.
That was here. That was here in this city. And that was one of the different consequences that you could tell happened because of a situation like this. If you drop the funds to the health sector of your country, well, they're not going to be able to fend with a crisis such as big as that was.
Yeah,
typical thing. So
yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, and you can certainly go, look, they're completely evil, they're completely screwed up, etc. But there's also how do you predict this kind of thing, and maybe they were dealing with other issues, and it's so nuanced that you can never really kind of can't sit there and pass judgment. Like it's not like committing genocide or something where it's like, well, you freaking killed a bunch of people, like you're evil, right? Like it's much more complicated than that.
It is. It is. Though I wouldn't say that they're evil, though sometimes you have to see that there is some sort of mean behavior. I mean, an example here in Ecuador, Exxon made a huge mess in a part of the Ecuadorian Amazon with some oil spill that shouldn't have happened. And that particular area is supposed to be a protected area, and they destroyed acres and acres of land. That difficult for that situation to be recovered, and the quantity of animal life that was affected, etc. Right? There was this lawyer. I don't remember his name, but you can Google it anyway. There was this lawyer that he was an American lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, American or British, and he sued Exxon and won the case. Right?
Okay.
And somehow Exxon people managed to convince a lawyer to request the computer with the investigation that this lawyer had. And because he refused, he was put in home imprisonment for about 2 years before the pandemic, including the pandemic, so 4 years now. And this happened. And you know that they did that because they didn't want to pay the quantity of money that they lost in the case that this guy won for Ecuador. They never paid Ecuador, and they managed to make the life of this lawyer living hell. Exxon to me sounds pretty evil. Even if you say like, there's no way you can say that. Oh no, I mean they can have better ideas or a wider perception and stuff. It looks evil to me. I don't know.
Corporations are so hard not to become evil. I think like there's just this sad thing that sure, a corporation may be made up of a bunch of individuals, all who have like the best of hearts or whatever, but because their objective, like you've joined this company and you're given the objective of you've got to have revenue of $1 billion, right? Like and that's your objective. And so I come into work and I'll be like, oh my God, how am I going to get to this objective? And the decisions that are made, while not overtly made specifically to be nasty, are just like, well, how do we protect the company? Like there's no thinking about how do we protect the world and our fellow humans. It's all the decisions I've got to make for the betterment of the company. And then because there's all these individuals making all these decisions separately that are in the interest of the company, all of a sudden outwardly the company's just doing horrible things and and trying to protect itself. And it's really sad thing that's sort of the way it goes. And sure, I'm not saying every corporation is evil, but I think it's just those that are not have to be lauded for the effort they probably have to go through to make sure that every decision they are making is morally sound.
Well, speaking about that, one of the areas in every worldwide, across the world, and every education system that is being affected the most is in the area of humanities, and precisely the area that we're teaching ethics, especially in philosophy. I mean, nobody knows what that was all about. Probably our generation actually saw philosophy a little bit more, like relevant for a little, at least for the essays we had to write to get into college, whatever. But newer generations, they don't have that level of education because the funding for these departments have been drop vastly everywhere. Everywhere I just read, just simply because I'm curious about the topic. And Spain, everywhere in Asia, Latin America, my own country, the areas of philosophy, the areas in which they teach things like literature and letters and everything that is the foundational, like essential to the development of the human soul from an academic perspective. Everything that's related to that seems to be not important today. Instead, what's important is everything that's technical, technological, and functional somehow.
Yeah.
And then you see that that perception favors numbers above real results. And what I mean by numbers, I'm just gonna give you an example that's really crazy, but hey, you know me, right? The Olympic Games, right? Just happened. In the Olympic Games, you had these issues of some female athletes that weren't allowed to participate because their counting of testosterone was too high. However,
Okay, I didn't know about this, but okay, yeah.
well, that happened. With many of
Yeah.
them were African from different African countries, and as we know, apparently from different parts of African country, that counting can be pretty high. Okay, and for these particular athletes, they were affected because they couldn't participate and they were favorites in whatever discipline they were participating, were supposed to participate. So they were banned. They couldn't go there. However, the same people that took that decision, they also took the decision of letting, I don't know if there were more than one, but one was a very famous case of a transgender a heavyweight lifter, um, man to woman, competed as man, transitioned to woman for years, and of course, obviously, the body is different, etc., etc. But if you have to judge on the reasons why one person is banned and the other one is accepted, even though the numbers can justify it, like no, these ladies had a higher testosterone content than this trans woman, dude, in your head, you know what just is just, and you could not really take the decision, like saying, I will ban these two women and will approve these trans women.
Well, yeah, but I would imagine that the decision that's been made there is purely the application of a rule, right? Like the rule says if your testosterone levels are above this, you can't compete, right? And so it was like, okay, this rule means you're out, you're in. The bit that has to then happen afterwards, right, is to go, hey, this situation, was this right? So then you go, okay, we've got to analyze that rule and change the rule, right? I always think that with sport, rules are actually, they're insanely important, right? Because
Yes.
there's these people who are going to push themselves to achieve whatever they can, whatever the cost, and
With the worst
only the application of a rule will mean that they won't push themselves too far. And that's where you have things like drugs and stuff, right? So the reason that the rules against drugs are in there is to basically protect the athletes from taking so many that they end up killing themselves just to become number one year, right? So yeah, it's then, there's like, let's go drugs again. Like, obviously you can drink coffee the day of competing, right? But is that giving you a boost? And so obviously it's not about boost, it's about health, right? Yeah. But then, like, what if somebody drinks 20 coffees or something? Is that healthy? Like, does that give them a boost? I don't know. But there's all this kind of nuance, even to something as dumb as drinking coffee on the day of competing, that, when I hear about these things, like this example, was it a weightlifter you said?
Yes.
Transgender weightlifter?
Yeah. Heavyweight.
Yeah. So there I'm just kind of like, well, the judges in the moment have to basically apply the rule, and then the arbitrating body has to sit there and go, okay, let's analyze this and create a new policy or a new rule or whatever that they then apply next time. I don't know. I just find it all so complicated, and I'm glad I'm not the one making the decisions.
Dude, but this can be seen in so many different examples today. And one of them was basically the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you, what you were speaking about. Like how people seem to highlight so much one part of a discussion that they apparently are blinded completely to other realities that other people are really, really focused on. And then the argument becomes so sick of alienation because none of the two sides are actually seeing the broader aspect, or simply they just decide not to. And they begin acting on a tribal manner, on a mob mind base sort of thinking.
Yeah. Tribal manner is a very interesting way of putting it, right? Like, is this humans going towards some kind of deep-rooted evolutionary behavior in that, hey, I've got my little tribe around me and I'm going to protect them to the detriment of everybody else nearby, right? Like that tribe across the hill, they might kill us, so I'm going to kill them as soon as they come near me. And now all of a sudden you've got a border, and so yeah, it is pretty sad that I mean, I don't know. Actually, no, I do know. It's the same everywhere in the world. That basically, there's not necessarily two sides, but more or less.
Yeah.
And people will be like, whatever the other side says is wrong. And I hate it so much too. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And it's and
you said that there are more
than
two sides. Sorry that I cut you off. You said that there are more than two sides is because obviously it's not. There are the two sides that are the most vocal, and everyone else are the other sides.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure most people are kind of nebulous in the middle, or at least I hope so. It's just the people who have like really picked a side. But I also mean, look, there is kind of a general in society two sides, and I think. A lot of the time that might be like, pro the current government, anti the current government, or something like that.
Yeah.
But, there could also be two sides on every issue that don't necessarily correlate to those two sides. So it could be a little bit nebulous. But I do think at the moment we're seeing a gravitation towards two sides because of it's the whole echo chamber thing, right? The whole so like lots of people are basically only consuming information via social media, and social media has this algorithm of if you liked something before, we're going to show you more of that same thing, and never giving you an opposing point of view. So it just means that if you have an initial opinion on something, you can never ever be swayed on it. And anytime anybody tells you anything different, you feel uncomfortable because you're just not used to being told to think that way.
Exactly. You just click, don't like.
Yeah. And that just means nobody's applying critical thinking anymore. Which, look, so there's a difference between a country where, if you're in a dictatorship or something like that, right, and the media is controlled, then you do only have one opinion, and social media plays a very important role there in that that there can be other information coming in to the people so that they can get that opposing point of view, as difficult as it is to get that through in those situations. It's in the places that have free media where it's super ridiculous, is because you end up having these media organizations. And look, one of the most famous media people in the world is an Australian, Rupert Murdoch. And he's very much got an agenda and opinion, and he controls a huge portion of the media in Australia. And it's so obvious what their agenda is and what their line is. And people do the same thing, the thumbs up or the thumbs down. They go, okay, I'm going to listen to that media because I trust it. It's saying the things that I like, and then don't watch anything else. And look, I'm the same. I don't happen to read or listen to any Murdoch media, because when I do, I kind of go, oh, I don't like what they're saying. It doesn't seem right. This isn't adding up. And look, if I wanted to ever say I was an expert on something, I would find out what the Murdoch media was saying about that topic, right? Because I need to be informed.
Okay.
At the moment, I don't have enough time to do that. I'm like, I want to know what's going on, but I'm not going to spend hours like investigating every source. So I'm just going to read what's going on once, and I'm going to choose my trusted source. So it's whether you've chosen your trusted source right or not is a big question as well.
The references, man. There has always been an issue for me, the idea of references and how heavy that idea weighs on your opinion of everything, your behavior, and even decisions that you make. I mean, if you have a good reference of a person, that person can be your friend, but that person doesn't necessarily deserve being a friend. You're simply giving them the category of friendship on behalf of the good reference you had from someone. Like probably you have on me the first time you met. This guy is a cool guy that works here. All right. And that was it. We're friends.
I think the first time I met you, you went and took me to the little gym around the corner from the school.
Yeah,
and we did a little workout there, and I don't know, I was just like, yeah, this guy's all right. We were wearing like collared shirts and stuff for teaching. We were out in the sun, like working up a sweat. It's like, okay.
That was cool because that was like half morning right after having our empanadas and breakfast.
Yeah. Oh, I do miss empanadas for breakfast. That's pretty good.
Yeah, me too. Food is totally different depending where you live, my friend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, when I lived in Venezuela, there was definitely Australian food that I missed. Well, I'll actually say probably more I missed Asian food.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was the spices. I was going crazy with the lack of spices in Venezuela. Yeah.
Well, you could have had access to spices if you had met the right people. Obviously, the people that you met, were not ready to it. Like, to take you to the places where to buy them. Obviously, there were some people that knew. And again, those things were not really from the popular knowledge of everyone. In reality,
there was a place where I could get it. I just had to travel like 50 minutes in order to pick up a bottle of spice, so yeah, I just went without.
That was cool really. But again, that situation, using my country as example for preferences, you see how people in my country, after everything that befell with the political situation that started with Chavez, that was the time that you went there. You realize that any good idea that was proposed on the side of one party or one camp was automatically ridiculized by the other camp, and that became so toxic that you can see that the fabric of the country began to fracture so badly that there was no way of holding a conversation in which you didn't agree with a position, because there were certain implications that you couldn't really say. For example, on my side, I had friends that obviously were from the left side, so of course they supported Chavez. And the most people I knew were on the right side, that they were against Chavez. I was in neither, because I never really believed in political agendas. I mean, I always thought that those people they don't really know what they're doing. That's what I always have in my mind, right? That's my own conviction of what politicians normally do. They work for a party, and whatever order they tell them to do, that's what they do. That's it. But, people were just, navigating between these two positions. And I realized that there were moments in which certain ideas from one side, to me, they sounded totally fine, logical, and perfect. On the other hand, some ideas on the other side were totally fine and correct. And when observations were made on one side or the other, automatically you were pointed out as, you are from the other. You know,
Yeah.
that's like, dude, you need to be capable of receiving observations of somehow. I mean, you know that your representative is a crook. Look what that person is doing. No, but he's against Chavez. So, you know what I mean? These type of things made people act on behaviors that were so bad that you could see that probably this situation that was known as the huge Venezuelan exit was mostly prompted by not just the economic situation, but even this social situation that we just couldn't stand each other.
Yeah, it was a spiral that just kept on pushing everything further and further down because nobody wanted to work together in order to build things up again.
No.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point because, coming from an outsider's point of view, when I was there in 2006, for me, it was the first time, like I found that politics in Venezuela very, very interesting because of exactly what you were talking about. I was kind of like, man, like everybody's so like pro Chavez or anti Chavez, and nobody realizes that because everybody's against each other, that's why things are going to hell. It's actually both sides have made decisions purely because they don't like the other. And that's what's driving the country downwards. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting at the time. And it wasn't like, I felt for, my friends like yourself living through the situation, but I still found it fascinating. I talked to people when I got back home and stuff about it. But now it's everywhere. Like it's like everywhere in the world went, oh, look at what Venezuela did. That was really effective. Let's apply that.
Oh my God. No. Can't believe that my country is responsible for such an awful work.
So I'll talk about Australia because obviously I know about Australia. I felt like our political system was trucking along pretty well. Look, and in Australia, we've had pretty bloody stable country. We're pretty wealthy. We're doing very, very well by world standards. And I felt like the government was in large portion responsible for that until it was about 9 years ago or so. We had this character, Tony Abbott, who he was in the opposition, and he basically took over the opposition on a climate change issue. So, the country was going to put in place I can't even remember an emissions trading scheme, and he was against it, and his current leader was for it. So the two parties were working together. Let's put this emissions trading scheme in place, right? Which is great. It's exactly what we want. That's what we're talking about. Let's have a government and opposition work together on the things that are right. But this guy went, no, this is not on, took over and was completely against it, killed the whole emissions trading scheme, and then started just being negative. Every single thing the government said, he said, no, that's wrong, that's bad, and just like created this energy of negativity, and then got elected because of it, right? And now that's all the politics in Australia is whatever the government has decided. Like if I'm the opposition, I'm against it. And now it's the conversation about any given topic has just become so stupid now because everybody's they've already drawn their opinion on the topic because they support the government or they support the opposition. And, now you're never going to come to the right decision about that topic.
Negationist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I say no just because you have that reference.
Yeah.
Dude, that's Honestly, I thought that progress was supposed to help us, make us better in handling language. Language purpose as it is, I mean, is supposed to make us communicate. We are humans, are those animals that had that blessing. But I sometimes believe that the blessing in itself is a curse because on the one hand, you can generate so much energy with words. Technology, or most of the technology today that is based on communication, that is all about words, 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 spreading out the words. And this, ever since the press was created, it became exponential everywhere, right? So on with every one of the different advances in technology ever since the press. But we have this issue of falling on these tricks, or falling down on these tricks put by the words that, again, sometimes highlight so much a symbol and doesn't really see the meaning behind the symbol in itself. So by favoring a symbol, I will say, okay, this is correct because apparently we are having a great economic time. You see, all those numbers say we are going great. And then you ask people around and everyone is unhappy. Why are they unhappy if the numbers are going great? And I mean, just the fact of regular people and their capacity of simply having a regular life. You grow up, you study, you work. With that, you're supposed to get a house and sustain a family and die. All right, that's more or less the scheme, right? But you know that among all those steps, right now, getting the job and using what you get from that job to get a house, right now, that's a major problem worldwide. How can you afford to have a house? Some people are obviously more fortunate than others because their economy allowed them to, use credit, use other different things that will help them. But that's not the common thing everywhere.
I think it's really even in any given society, there's probably only about 5% of people at the moment who can afford something as luxurious as a house.
Wow.
You're giving me a face like it's less than 5%.
No, that hurts when you said that.
Yeah, it's that, and yeah, that's a wealth accumulation thing, right? That
Yeah.
there's accommodation for everybody available, right? There's enough houses, they exist. It's just who owns them, and people who own more houses, they can afford to buy more, and they do, right? It's a easy, stable investment. But at the same time, it's like, well, do you need that extra house? And then there's also the factor of the most desirable places are often like the center of the city or something, right? Like, hey, everybody has to work there. I want to make my commute shorter. I want to get into this nice spot. But then you have a huge portion of those places. Maybe the person actually like lives in the country and they only go to the city every few days for a bit of business. They have a house, apartment or a house there that they only use like 2 days a month or something like that, right?
Yes.
But they can afford to have that place, and
Ideal.
Everybody else would love to have that place,
Yes.
especially as they can't afford the commute either. But they're pushed out and they're pushed further and further away to where they can actually afford things. But then there's the Airbnb factor, right? So in the center of town is where all the most desirable Airbnbs are. So people are buying those places, pushing up the prices in order to buy them, because then they can put it on Airbnb and make more money by having people stay there instead of somebody who actually just wants somewhere to live. Yeah. I'm not saying Airbnb is evil, but it's made decisions which are in Airbnb's interests, and this has produced a kind of, evil might not be the right word, but it's produced a bad outcome for society.
Reckless. It's reckless.
You think it's reckless? I mean, it's a business model, and I mean, I guess if you had applied it economically and stuff and put the right modeling to that business model, you might have predicted what was going to happen. But I don't think you could have. And now that Airbnb's in this situation, what do you do other than go, oh, I feel bad about what we've done to society, we're shutting down, which wouldn't solve anything, right? Because if Airbnb did that, like, fell on their sword and went, we're not running it anymore, some other business will go, well, that's a successful business model, I'll do that instead, right? So, the damage is done and it's irreversible.
Well, we can see it on the hindsight, we can see it as a learning experience. But then again, going back to the ethics behind making a living and how much of ethics are needed in organizations that can function beyond the borders of their own countries and have such influence like this. And they definitely, absolutely need some sort of, they need to be liable for their behavior in some way. But what I was meaning by this is, like, let's say, if your business is based on a product that everyone knows is nocive, you know that your days are counted in that business, right? If you keep pushing it, you're definitely evil. That's my point. You're definitely evil because you shouldn't. You know that your product is nocive. I'm speaking about, let's say, the tobacco companies. I'm speaking about the oil industry. I'm speaking about so many different things.
There's plenty of, come on, man. There's a point where you learned that what you're doing is just hurting people. Maybe it's time to pack it in. Yeah. But again, it's like, if somebody spent so much of their life and energy building something up to then discover that what you've built is wrong.
Yeah.
Oh man, the mental change there. Like, how, we're talking a lot about how people have opposing points of view. And a lot of that is like the brain just doesn't want to acknowledge that you've made a bad decision. So it does everything in its power to justify your current position. Yeah. Could you imagine if you had built up let's say a cigarette company, right? And you built it up and for many years, you did well. And then the science came out that, oh man, all these people are dying of lung cancer and stuff. Your brain would just go, but the amount of relaxation I have provided people, and it's their own decision to smoke. So, and I think you'd just justify it somehow in your brain. And
it sounded like that guy, the owner of Meta, Facebook.
Oh yeah, like Zuckerberg.
Yeah. It sounded like that. Like, I just gave them the option. They're destroying the world, but I gave them the option.
Exactly.
The idea was for them to communicate, not to destroy the world. But hey.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And I listened to those speeches. Look, hey, like, it's not like I like Zuckerberg or anything, but I don't see him as a total villain like everybody else does because of that very reason. I'm like, the dude's like, he didn't do it maliciously. At least I like to generally give people the benefit of the doubt, because I think in general people are not bad at heart. They just may do bad things because they're pushed to a point where they have to, right?
Yeah.
And in his case, he was like, yeah, I'm going to build this thing and make people connected. And, along the way, he's made various business decisions that has led to Facebook being what it is.
Yeah.
And now he's just trying to justify those decisions. And most of what he's saying, hey, look, it's true. They did just give people the option, and how they've used that option is
theirs.
Varied. But at the same time, what else do you do about it? Because I mean, certainly now they're saying, hey, look, Facebook has to, and all social media has to have some degree of control over what content gets put out there. But there's a bit of me going, yeah, but how do you decide what content should go out there? Because essentially that's censorship, right? You're going, hey, you can say these things, but not those things. And it's like, well, what's wrong with those things? It depends on the thing, right? But it's happening, right? So there was all the so the famous stuff is mostly with Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
And look, in that case, I'm kind of a little bit in favor because the guy was a proven liar and just kept on saying stuff. And it's like, well, once you've been like, he wasn't offering an opposing point of view for the sake of discourse or full decision making. He was offering his opposing point of view purely for self-service. Yes. So it's like, but we can know that because he's a high-profile figure. So he's been scrutinized to death. But if I started saying stuff on social media that was full of rubbish, it would be totally wrong to censor me, right? Because Facebook doesn't know anything about me. So, and also, look, nobody's listening to me either. That's another key factor. But it's where do you draw the line of somebody is big enough and known enough that you can make the decision of censorship versus somebody isn't. And it's going to be some point, but how do you draw that line?
Kind of like a superpower, the power of charisma. Dude,
well, that's what's traditionally decided it, right?
Yeah, because think about this. This guy was basically, he proved how terrible it is to live in a society that democracy is moved by influencers. He was a huge influencer. I mean, he became super known not because of Trump towers. He became super known because of the Trump show of the what was it? The Office?
Apprentice.
No. Apprentice. Yes, The Apprentice. Everybody in the world knew who he was since that show, and everybody loved him. Why? Because he was brass and all the personality, the huge personality that he is. He used that persona and he beat a system with that persona, and he proved everyone that you just need to be famous and people will follow you.
You need to have money too. We're talking about the people who can afford to buy property, and we're talking about the person who's a person whose life has been buying property.
Oh yes, true. True, which is like the surplus of everything. In Spanish we say el colmo. To add salt to injury. Really, honestly, this happened. It's true. It's I think that it's not even a nuanced thing, because you got Berlusconi in Italy in its time. You got this actor that became a president in the United States before him,
Ronald Reagan.
Exactly, which many people consider the best president ever.
Depending on which of those sides you talk to.
That's what I'm saying. Many people, because honestly,
and you've got what's his name in India is the president there's a famous cricket player. You've got wasn't Pele gonna run for president or something as well?
He ran for the Senate, and I think that he did actually take position sometimes, but I don't remember exactly if he actually managed.
Tell you what, he'd probably be a better president than they've got now. So,
well, Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So that's all. But there's also, look, you're right about charisma is really important. But there's also a reason why these people have been successful at one thing and then are successful at another thing, right? There's the amount of effort you put into goals that you want to achieve, and also the amount of resources you have behind you in order to achieve those goals. Yes. So yeah, all those factors mean that if you've succeeded once, like you're likely to succeed again because you've either got the personal capability of doing it or the resources to do it or both.
True. Speaking of that, how is it going with your life, my friend? Like that's a big chunk of a conversation that we had with this, because success to me is a situation that becomes like a concept in life about like how you begin to come to terms with your own life. You know, some people don't ever get that, and they never really understand that idea of success, and they believe that they're living miserable lives. And other people are just having a good time. So, how are you doing, my friend?
I don't know if anybody's having a good time nowadays. Actually, I suppose we're at a point where people are starting to try to have a good time again. So I'm in a weird place at the moment in that, so for the last decade, I had been working for a software company. We grew and grew, and I was the product lead on that company, and we sold the company and the product for a not like, you know, not an amount of money that would be on the news or anything, but a decent amount of money. I saw less than 0.01% of that money, so it was not very much in the end, or at least I didn't. If I had asked for more wages during my years working there, I would have made more than I made just by being a team player and helping to build the company. So a little bit of bitterness coming out. But I kind of, after that happened, I was working for the new company, the parent company, and it was okay. But this idea came across my table, and I went, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and work on this idea. So I'm currently trying to start a new business, and I've spent the last year working on a product. It's an entertainment product. What I've made is, do you know an escape room, right?
What?
Do you know what an escape room is?
Escape room?
No.
Tell me.
It's an activity that is very popular, mostly in the developed world, where you book with a group of friends, 3 or 4 friends. You go to the place and you get locked inside a room, and then you have to solve puzzles together in order to unlock the door and escape the room.
Huh.
And this is something that's sort of grown over the last 8 years or so, from like the sort of idea into an industry. And so there's places all around the world where you can book and play an escape room and do the puzzles, and they're very fun. Kind of like, it takes you about an hour. I do it with some friends, solve some puzzles. That's fun. What I've made is a version where I'm using some technology from our friend Zuckerberg. I have built a virtual reality escape room.
Awesome.
So I've spent the last year building this thing that basically you book it like any other escape room, but when you arrive, it's just an empty room, and you all put on headsets together, and then you're somewhere else. And it's still solving puzzles and things. And my first one I've made has been a prison escape. So you're in prison and you have to escape together. So I made this thing, and it's fun. So I've demoed it to friends. I've demoed it to escape room owners here in Canberra, and some other general people, and all the feedback is really good. So I'm like, cool. Like, I've built something fun. Now I've got to work out how to sell it and for people to enjoy it. And basically, I've got to look for partners who are going to open venues that will then use my software as part of their venue.
Interesting. Honestly, the first impression I got when you were telling me about this is like claustrophobic. When I saw that, it just reminded me a little bit of my subway back in Caracas. Yeah, that was a little bit like a panic room, in fact, sometimes, especially when there was a blackout. Oh man, that was bad when that was a blackout. And down there with all these many people and the closed doors and everyone trying to get out, but you can't get out because there's too many people. And
Oh, and stifling heat and everything. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So you told me about it. I said, like, how could people actually enjoy that? But then I remember when I was younger in Caracas, and there was a place that's called the Indian Caves, Cuevas del Indio, which are like another area of Avila Mountain, but on the south side of Caracas. You know, the Caracas is a valley, so it's like this, right? And so it's a little bit higher compared to, for example, Altamira, might be like over 400 meters higher than Altamira. And there, in this, there is this park. They have caves, so you basically just go wait with. You don't hire. Well, last time that I went there, you pay some symbolic amount of money that is for this the safeguard post that they have there, and they assign you a guide. So the guy goes with a lamp, and he tells you to follow him. But I remember younger than my last time that sometimes we went in without the guide. And there was one particular cave, dude. There was Pio Cave. It took us last time we went there about 45 minutes to explore it. Now, to explore it, you were supposed to have lamps, but we were groups of four and only one of us had lamps. So the experience was basically to be 45 minutes in the complete dark, crawling, bumping into things, sort of climbing rocks without really seeing anything. Dude, that was an experience. And I kind of felt that maybe that's what you are actually selling in a way.
I can see where you think that, but it's actually kind of the opposite. So the room that my thing's designed for is 6 meters by 6 meters. Okay. So it's a pretty big room. Okay. Anyway, but even so, even if you felt claustrophobic in it, let's say you were in a closet, right? And you know that's quite a claustrophobic space.
Yeah.
But you put on the goggles, and what you see is you're standing on the edge of the sea, looking out over the beach, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, that feeling of being trapped is gone. Even though if you're locked in a closet, you can see the beach, you'd actually feel a lot more free. So I'm selling the opposite, or at least that's what I'm going to claim.
Okay, all right. And there is no danger of a person who's not 100%, cool up there. That suddenly will feel like, oh, look, the beach. Let me start running. And start running.
Well,
all the 6 meters to the wall.
So I don't actually put you on the beach. Right? I mean, I've already said it's a prison escape. So, and look, a prison is a claustrophobic space anyway. And you do start off in your cell, but you can see outside your cell. You can see out the window, and you can see through the door and into the large atrium area where there's other cells and all that kind of thing. Wow. So the feeling of claustrophobia is reduced, like, how dramatically that kind of feeling reduces the moment you have a window in the room. It's much easier to be in the room. So, yeah.
Awesome. And well, obviously, I believe that everyone will ask you the same question, like how cool the graphics are.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I'm going to say they're great.
But now, if I have to compare, let's say, The thing is, I haven't really played video games since my PlayStation 2.
Hmm.
There's PlayStation 5 already, so I'm kind of like outdated. Um, so I don't know exactly how cool the graphics are right now, but I remember that some of the trailers that you watch back in the day about the first VRs, one of the things that you could tell was that it was way better than, for example, what you see about Minecraft. Way better in terms of the interaction. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like pixel looking graphics. It's like pretty smooth. The lines are almost movie like.
Hmm.
But then again, for other people, they will say that, well, but that's the thing that will put you a little bit out because it looks a little bit unreal because it looks like movie and not exactly like you. You don't move that way. I don't know. That's what I was asking.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've put a lot of effort into making the graphics look as realistic as possible to fully immerse the person in the space.
Awesome.
And they do that. So I have people play it and then they take off the goggles and they're like, "Whoa, this is weird!" Like I'm in reality now. Which is great. It's the kind of feeling I want people to have, that they lose themselves so much in the reality of the game
Yes.
that they forget about what, like, most of the time they happen to be playing in my garage. So, they forget that they're in my garage and they're off in this imaginary scenario. And that's been working. I'll send you some screenshots.
Great.
See what it looks like.
One of the questions that got me there that suddenly just popped up is making such a cool thing put you in a really critical position of what's next in terms of, okay, you are creating some sort of a universe with the type of game that you're playing, but this universe needs to keep going, keep growing, because obviously people will just, if it becomes really popular, people will just get to know like the very first part, right? So you obviously have been thinking, okay, we got Yale. Now, out of the Yale, how do we do? Do we do a Sergeant Pepper, like a connected universe, or would we just go to some other different places, totally disconnected? What is more or less what you have thought about this?
So we've considered both options. Potentially, we can do a sequel, or hey, let's do something completely different. And personally, I want to do something completely different because I know that so I'm going to set myself the objective of releasing a new one every year. So I can tell my customers, hey, you're going to expect a new one every year.
Yeah.
And say in 5 years' time, I've got 5 potential games that somebody who's booking can play. So somebody new comes to the venue and books. Which one do they choose? I don't want them to have to choose the first one because the rest are sequels. I want them to go, oh, hey, this one, which is it's set in a witch's hut. Oh, that sounds much more interesting to me than prison. So I'll play the witch's hut, right? So by having diverse options gives people the option to choose. And also, I expect I will get better at it. And so the 5th one will be better than the first. So
that's great.
I want people to book the new one and not the older ones first.
That's great, dude. Honestly, I'm so happy to get to listen that my friend is making a universe. I watched an anime, that I love anime and manga a lot. We spoke about this before. And that topic of the full immersion universe, uh, video game based worlds, or simply just being transported to another world from a console. That's a trope. A trope. That's the word they use. It. Yeah, that's a trope. A trope. A trope. A trope. That's a trope that's really used widely in anime lately. One of the coolest ones, famous ones, probably you know of it, is Sword Online.
Sword Online.
Online. Okay, the plot is they this company develops this VR game similar to the one that you have. That is so well immersive that you basically the only thing that you need to do is just lay down, put on your helmet, and close your eyes. Your heart automatically is connected to this thing, right? So you go to this world, and when you are in this world, you begin to do a series of things that are pretty close to reality, but with the rules of magic of the world. Okay? So it's a fantasy world, but you can learn how to cook, like really how to cook, even though there are ways in which you can do it like a robot will do it in a game, but you can actually do it there. Everything, including killing and stuff like that, right? So the game allows you to do all of this, but suddenly the owner, which in this case will be you, went crazy and he put some sort of a trick firewall on the game after the game was launched, like 1 hour after the game was launched, in which it deleted the logout option, so nobody could log out. So people were forced to finish the game, otherwise nobody will log out. That took about 10 years to finish. All right. In the meantime, most people that were playing the game were basically supported by medical staff that had to be basically sponsored by the company, the game company, because obviously otherwise they will die. Right.
Yeah.
So imagine all the implications of this thing. And I'm saying like, oh my God, this is the next Sword Online designer.
No, there's no way. That definitely sounds like the plot of an anime and not like real life.
Definitely.
And so mine is you. Look, I love that you're saying I'm creating universes, but I'm more telling stories. So this is it's going to last about an hour. This thing, and I actually don't. There's no world outside the prison. Like once you escape, you escape. That's the end.
Okay. All right.
But I like telling stories, so it gives me an opportunity to sort of tell a short story and give people a bit of fun listening to that story. Like I don't know if you know, but I did improv theatre for a number of years, and yeah, the joy of that was getting on stage in front of people and creating stories, and as opposed to if you did a scripted play, the story is the same every night. I've learned it for months, and now I'm presenting it to people, and it's the same every night. With impro, it was, hey, I get to create a brand new story every night I perform, which was great. I loved it. The story quality sometimes was good, sometimes wasn't good, depending on the night. Whereas now I create a story and I know it's going to be good every time. But I've been working on the same story for more than 12 months. So, for me, it's less satisfying. But hey, hopefully I might actually turn it into some way to make a living off it. We'll see.
That's so cool, my friend. That's so cool. The coolest thing about this is that it's got prediction that's gonna go beyond your time. Every time that you create something, like it is a breakthrough.
That's true, but so I work in tech, right? And tech is not immune to the ravages of time. It's like something's generally obsolete within about 10 years. So
True.
I would anticipate that my thing probably won't last longer than that.
It depends. Look at what's happening with Nintendo. A lot of people are buying the old classic Nintendo.
The people who buy old classic Nintendos, are they buying it? Why are they buying it?
Nostalgia.
Exactly. I think it's mostly nostalgia. So it's only people who have played it before who will play it again.
Well, what you need is basically make them have that experience that definitely they're gonna have some nostalgia. Everything that they have to come back and say, like, you remember that game about jail time? In which you have to break up from, yeah, I remember that game. Let's get that beer again. And they start dusting this in 2045. Oh, look at this. It still works. I always think to amuse myself with stuff about this, about the future, because, I think that, if you watch news a little bit, you get depressed. If you look at things that are happening outside the street, and if you don't have the mindset, you can also get depressed. So you need to have the right mindset to see your day to day, to face your struggles, right? But then after you got that mindset, there are new needs that come on, that become important for your life. Apart from simply just thriving with your work, and the same with, let's say, family, etc. There have to be something extra. That something extra is obviously a privilege that happens on people that have, like, uh, their lives allow them to have this extra moment, whether it is time, simply just a little bit of extra free time or something like this. So when you do have that time, that even funds or whatever, and you dedicate that to create something, it's, if I were a Christian, it's like if you were in contact with your own essence as you being the Son of God. See what I mean? Like, we humans have that too, apart from just language. We have the capacity of creating stuff from zero.
Yeah.
When I see that, when I see someone doing that, doing something like, hey, my cat is just, sorry, my cat is just almost leaving the house. Uh, I will tell you, I will show you my cat in a little bit. It's really naughty boy. What I was saying, what was I saying?
Yeah.
The moment that you are creating stuff, the more that you have done stuff like this, is it puts you on that line of people in the world that have created something, you know, like people that leave some sort of trace. And that trace has a projection definitely to the future. Okay. And that's one of my dreams too. I mean, living in, probably that's one of the reasons of this show that we have, the Object Petite A Dwellers podcast. Like, maybe one day some people will say, That's a cool conversation."
Yeah. Well, it's you're creating something that will last, and hopefully, and when maybe you're long gone and your bones are buried, somebody watches this conversation and goes, "Oh, these people in 2022, they were weird."
Yeah, totally.
They were worried about society, but like society is way worse now. So I'm pretty sure that's what every generation says.
Oh, that's so cool and that's so true, man. I'm so really excited for that, about your future. Well, I haven't talked to you a little bit about me and what we're doing.
Yeah,
Let's
please.
see. When we got here, I got here with a job at a school. Before that, I never worked for a school, and of course, for me was like a new school, life school, or school of life, because honestly, man, that was so difficult to deal with kids in that level.
What age were you teaching? Or
I was teaching English, of course, but I was teaching a subject that was new. That was the subject of speaking, which basically I had to create from an abstract that I made of the test, the Cambridge test, the CEFR certification test, in which there is one part that is speaking. I had to basically develop a full program for a school year, okay, for the last 3 years of high school, using that. Now, of course, you probably say, what would you do for five months of work? What would you do with speaking? And I had to see every classroom. I had 9 classrooms, and I had to see them minimum 3 times a week, I think.
Oh my God. So you had 9 classes times 3, so 27 classes a week.
Yes, that's
while you were building the curriculum.
Yes.
Oh man, that's a tough period.
Not experienced at all before as a teacher, not as a school teacher.
So learning how to deal with kids as well. But you said last 3 years of high school, so they were teenagers.
Yeah, don't you think that they're easier?
I wouldn't say easier, different. Yeah.
They're really, they have what they have, right? You know, teenagers. Yeah. Those were the really dangerous ages too, because those were the ages in which here there was like a wave of teachers that were reported for having broken the sacred rule of going out with their students.
Oh,
dating the students.
Okay.
Yeah. Apparently that was a custom here. Many teachers used to do that, and of course some even did worse. And it was so bad that we were forced, teachers that were working at the time were forced to update our criminal records and make a certified letter with, you know, judges and all that we haven't ever been investigated for some sort of child molestation case.
Mm-hmm. Good.
That was scary, dude. I was scared of all the kids that were around me. I was basically just on the schoolyard when I had to, you know, look over a kid like this most of the time. Look, my hands are up. My hands are up. When people would approach me, I was, you know, applying social distances from the get-go. 1 meter distance, please. 1 meter distance. And by the way, I was very popular, which made it even difficult.
Oh, really?
I was the first Venezuelan teacher, and back then Venezuela was trendy. So, hey, mister, how's Venezuela? You know, the typical thing. So, for me, it was a little bit hard in that sense. I remember I had to come up with the evaluating and criterion plans for every one of those classrooms in 1 week. Couldn't sleep for that week. And then the exams came, so I couldn't sleep in the exams, the midterm exams for that week. It was hard, dude. It was hard. All my hair went gray in that moment, those 6 months. And then finally Francia arrived, and when she arrived, my life changed, dude. I grew up as a man, basically, after those 6 months and getting my wife here. Like, my mind or my mentality did such a turn during those months that I had to focus solely on the whole situation of keeping that job, because the job was difficult. And I saw people being fired constantly. And me obviously being the only chance of bringing over Francia. So, you know, I had to keep the job. And after Francia arrived, then, you know, doing everything of keeping both of us afloat. And we only had one job, so it was not easy at the beginning. It was hard, but it was great. I mean, that taught me so much about life, so much. Had to grow up a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. So things have settled now?
Yeah, after that many years, that was 2016, right? And after that many years, my position in the school got some sort of a good consolidation. I got moved to junior high and promoted to a different subject, and teaching Cambridge preparation and a subject that is close to philosophy, that is speaking on values. I teach values, so ethics. And I have worked for other institutions outside this school to make a little extra until the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit us, we started making like a field study about what could we do with our free time, because we have freer time than other people. We were still working, but online only. And of course, we were really busy, but at the same time, really free. Like it is when you're connected from your house. So we made a full field study about what we could do. Too many people were teaching English online, so many, in fact, that it was discouraging. And we even applied to work for some of those companies. Some of them called us, etc., etc. But the offers that we were receiving were not good, or the timing even was not good for us. And we came out with this plan, and it's a product that we developed from the company or firm that we started, France and me. The name is A-létheia, the firm. And the first product of it is the Speak Up Club. And why the Speak Up Club and not the Speaking Club? Because it's not just really only a conversation place for people that want to speak English, that want to practice their English. But more than that, it's a place for people to begin using what they know in English to explore topics that are not that easy to explore, to adapt to new vocabularies and new situations in which they are compelled to think way above, outside the box, the usual box, and that intervention made them grow exponentially within the use of a language. And at the end, we give them some sort of reward, and that reward is basically our hook, and that's the reason why we charge it and not give it for free. So we started that, launched it back last September, and now we are in session. Today was session 42.
Wow, great. Yeah, well done. That's a good idea. My Spanish now is terrible. Like, it's so bad.
You need to speak up club in Spanish, my friend.
Well, yeah. So when I returned to Australia after traveling for a while, I went and joined a school, a Spanish school. And yeah, basically it was once a week I would come, and it was structured like a class, but essentially we were the advanced students. So we'd sat around and conversed about a topic in Spanish. And that was great. So yeah, really good idea. Make that something online. People can join up and converse and talk about something is, yeah, really good idea. Unfortunately, it didn't work for me because I found that my only Spanish was once a week talking in this class. My Spanish was still getting worse. And eventually I was like, I'm paying for these classes, but my Spanish is getting worse rather than better. Like, forget about it. And when I stopped doing those classes, that was the end. Like I've got some knowledge, but
languages are forgotten.
Can't have a conversation anymore.
Yeah. Language are easily forgotten. If you don't practice them, your brain gets the space that you use for languages busy with other stuff, and you forget them. I learned a little bit of Mandarin, and I can't remember almost nothing of it now. I just dumb. In the past, I could have a really stupid small talk with someone. Now, can even only say hi.
I can say, oh, 这碗饭太烫了.
I don't remember what that means.
Which means, oh, this rice is too hot.
Ooh. Well,
and basically, it's because when I did ni hao, when I did Chinese classes at school, we did Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and like the line was, oh, the food is too hot. So just because I said the line so many times, it's just buried in the brain somewhere.
Cool.
Of course, I also have a wife who speaks Mandarin, but she doesn't. That's it's probably number 4 in her list of languages that she'll use. So we don't use it very much around the house.
Wow. Okay. Good, dude. That's great. Having 4 languages around you, it always puts your brain.
In the house, it's only English. She wants. She
Don't be
doesn't want me staring at her like an idiot, going. So yeah, it's only English.
Well, my friend, I don't know if you wanted to say hi to Francia before before.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Recording?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me stop recording before that. Dude, honestly, we would love to have a second talk with you if you want to. But of course, that topic, I wanted to choose it with you beforehand. I honestly love the fact of speaking with you because for the time that we known each other, I realized that, I mean, we met a lot of people back in the time that we were there in Ecuador, a lot of people from many different countries, right? And during that time, for me, that experience more than just a job, for me was like a second university, second college. I went to university first to get my degree, which was in the area of philosophy. And then obviously, as everybody who studied that, you never really know what to do with it for work, right? So started looking for different things to do. In the meantime, I got this job at a call center working in human resources. I studied a lot of marketing there. And then afterwards, I got to Lingua because of my English level. And for me, again, in Lingua was a teaching experience. I wanted to learn how it is to become a teacher because I hated everything I was doing for work before. I hated it. I hated working in marketing. I hated working with communication companies. I hated all that. So I said, this is a good change. Let's see how it goes. Meeting all these new people got me so much that you won't believe. However, not all the people that we met were people that we knew we could have this type of interaction for what we project this channel to be. As you could read, this channel is based on a question. The Object Petite A is, I don't know if you know a little bit of psychoanalysis, is one of the theses from Jacques Lacan.
No,
No.
I don't.
Okay, it's kind of like we humans are. Okay, you love movies, so you will definitely love this reference. You remember that movie from Guillermo del Toro, the Spanish director?
Like Pan's Labyrinth or something?
Okay, the same guy, the same director. Okay,
Yeah.
He made Hellboy 2, Hellboy 1 and 2.
Okay.
I don't know if you watched any of those.
I think I watched 1, but not 2.
Well, the second one was the best one. Was about some elves that made a coup, right? And these elves were really cool because they were made of savia from trees. It was a cosmology that was totally new ones at the time. Now, this elf wanted to kill humans, and the reason why he justified this was because the same thing. He said humans are those beings that are condemned to always be trying to fill a void that is impossible to fill. So that's basically the Object Petite A, is we are constantly journeying for something. But that journey is more than often ill placed because we don't really know, right? We don't really know. And we know that we have the journey, and depending on the impulse or the stimuli we get triggered by, we go one direction. And sometimes we thrive there and we have good time and great, and sometimes we don't. And depending where you're born, this journey can lead you to have a great life or a terrible life, right? Some people have a good fortune and some other people have terrible fortune for the same reasons, but we all humans have that situation. We love to explore this on the usage of the language, and that we use the purpose of this podcast is to give our students that as an example for them. Like, how they can master the uses of the language and see that there are all the different things that they can acquire beyond just simply learning language.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome.
any experience, my small experience of learning Spanish is my only other language I've ever learned, opens you up to different ways of thinking, which, so you kind of learn more about the culture that you're learning about, right? Because there's certain different ways of thinking about things, and language is probably the biggest barrier towards understanding a culture properly. And then that allows you, even within just, say, my small English-speaking culture, so it's not small, is that you learn to think about things from different perspectives a lot more, and you know that, hey, when people in Thailand are doing X and Y, and I go, that's really weird, I know there's probably a reason for that, but I don't understand it because of their language is different or whatever, and it's a big part of preventing that us and them mentality. If everybody knows that, hey, others will think differently, then you're more understanding of them being different. Yeah.
And you're more understanding of the whole world too.
Yeah.
You have to suppose that if they are different, then the others will be different than them, and you, and everyone is different, and everyone is possible. So they must be. Thank you, my friend Brad.